Hello, good day. You're welcome to my channel. Please go ahead and hit the subscribe button if you're yet to do so. I have a very interesting story today to tell, and it's such a delight to have you here. This is day three, so if you have missed the first 2 days, please go ahead and look at the stories we had shared earlier. This is day three, and we're just going to go on and keep on going on. This is Chicken Soup for the Soul, Living Your Dreams by Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen. And today I bring you the story of Mrs. Annie Johnson of Arkansas. In 1903, the late Mrs. Annie Johnson of Arkansas found herself with two toddling sons, very little money, and a slight ability to read and add simple numbers. To this picture add a disastrous marriage and the burdensome fact that Mrs. Johnson was a Negro. When she told her husband, Mr. William Johnson, of her dissatisfaction with their marriage, he considered that he too found it to be less than he expected, and that he had been secretly hoping to live and study religion. He added that he thought God was calling him not only to preach, but to do so in Enid, Oklahoma. He did not tell her that he knew a minister in Enid with whom he could study and who had a friendly unmarried daughter. They parted amicably. Annie keeping the one room house and William taking most of the cash to carry himself to Oklahoma. Annie, over 6 feet tall and big boned, decided she would not go to work as a domestic and leave her precious babies to anyone's care. There was no possibility of being hired at the town's cotton gin or lumber mill. But maybe there was a way to make the two factories work for her. In her words, I looked up the road I was going and back the way I came. And since I wasn't satisfied, I decided to step off the road and cut me a new path. I like that. Cut me a new path. She told herself she wasn't a fancy cook, but that she could mix groceries well enough to scare hunger away from starving a man. She made her plans meticulously and in secret. One early evening, to see if she was ready, she placed stones in two 5-gallon pails and carried them 3 miles to the cotton gin. Hey, testing her muscles. She rested a little and then, discarding some rocks, she walked in the darkness to the sawmill 5 miles farther along the dirt road. On her way back to her little house and her babies, she dumped the remaining rocks along the path. That same night, she walked into the early hours, boiling chicken and frying ham. She made dough and filled the rolled out pastry with meat. At last, she went to sleep. The next morning, she left her house carrying the meat pies, lard, and iron brazier, and coals for a fire. Just before lunch, she appeared in an empty lot behind the cotton gin. At noon, dinner bell rang, and she dropped the savories into boiling fat, and the aroma arose and floated over to the workers. Wow, who spilled out of the gin, covering with white lanes, looking like specters. Most workers had brought their lunches of pinto beans and biscuits or crackers, onions, and cans of sardines, but they were tempted by the hot meat pies that Annie ladled out of the fat. She wrapped them in newspapers which soaked up the grease and offered them for sale at a nickel each. Although business was slow those first days, Annie was determined. She balanced her appearances between 2 hours of activity. So on Monday, if she offered hot fresh fries at the cotton gin and sold the remaining cooled piles down at the lumber mill for 3 cents. Then on Tuesday, she went first to the lumber mill, presenting fresh just cooked piles as the lumbermen covered in sawdust emerged from the mill. That was wisdom. For the next few years on balmy spring days, blistering summer suns, and cold and wet and wintry middays, Annie never disappointed her customers. That is consistency. Who could count on seeing the tall, brown skinned woman bent over her brazier, carefully turning the meat pies? When she felt certain that the workers had become dependent on her, she built a stall between the two hives of industry and let the men run to her for their lunchtime provisions. She had indeed stepped from the road which seemed to have been chosen for her, that is, being a domestic worker. She had cut herself a brand new path. In years, that store became a store where customers could buy cheese, meal, syrup, cookies, candy, writing tablets, pickles, canned foods, fresh fruit, soft drinks, coal, oil, and leather soles for worn-out shoes. Each of us, and I repeat it again, each of us has the right and the responsibility to access the roads which lie ahead and those over which we have traveled. And if the future road looms ominous or unpromising, or unpromising and the road back uninviting, then we need to gather resolve and carrying only the necessary baggage, step off that road into another direction. If the new choice is also unpalatable without embarrassment, we must be ready to change that as well. This was written by Maya Angelou, but it's actually Mrs. Annie Johnson of Arkansas's story. I mean, that is so awesome. We don't have to be stuck. Let's look at that road, where we are coming from, where we are headed. If both are uninviting, unpromising, we can cut a new path. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow as we go to another inspiring story. But please, before you leave, subscribe, hit the subscribe button, share this. I'm sure it's good for your children, right? Share this with somebody in your life. Thank you and see you tomorrow.